So if you've ever been on the internet, which I'll assume you have, you'll know that people love ranking things. You gotta know which everyone's favourite Star Wars is and like the exact order that they all go in. And in my heart, I'm like, art is completely subjective and each of these things stands up on their own and is a worthwhile piece of media. But then in my stupid mathematical brain, I'm like, everything has a value, everything's got a proper order it should be in. Perfectly balanced as all things should be. Also, I just like, people love hearing about this stuff. I love talking about this stuff. So we're ranking all the Marvel movies. This is just my list. So if you disagree, chill out for a sec and realise that people are allowed to have different opinions. I'll also throw out there that I prefer a character-driven movie to a plot-driven movie, which is probably why you'll see a lot of the team-up movies lower down on the list. There's 19 of these. At number 19 is The Incredible Hulk, and honestly I watched it maybe a month or two ago and I've forgotten most of it already. It was back when the cinematic universe was still like finding its feet and the movies were a bit bland. They didn't want to push it too much, didn't want to like throw too much crazy stuff out there. It's playing it very safe. None of the movies on this list I would say are bad, at worst they're mediocre. The Incredible Hulk's one of those. So number 18, Avengers Age of Ultron. So as I said, the team-up movies might be quite low down on the list because there's not a whole lot of character stuff in there, but like seeing the cool team-up stuff is quite fun. Ultron's quite a fun villain. It's just messy. It's a film that it doesn't really go anywhere. It's not bad, it's just mediocre. It's like, yeah, if it's on TV, like, you can get into it. Number 17, Thor, the first one. I kind of feel bad about this one. I enjoy the movie, but after I watched it recently, it reminded me how far the MCU has come. In the first movie, Thor is a pretty boring guy. It's got like some fun fish out of water comedy bits. I like all his science pals. Also, Loki, who becomes fun in later movies, is still kind of boring in this one. He doesn't do a whole lot of exciting stuff. In this movie, they're still like working it out. It's a bit serious compared to some of the other ones. Number 16, Thor: The Dark World. I put this one just above Thor because the characters are more interested in this one. I like the Thor Loki team up stuff, that's quite fun. But this one is low on the list because the villains and the evil plot and like basically the entire plot of the movie is incredibly boring. I can barely remember it. I'm not sure it's too long since I watched this, but the memorable stuff in the movie is the jokey stuff and the Thor and Loki team up stuff. Christopher Eccleston wearing a weird mask is not what you're watching this movie for. Number 15. This is the one that's gonna annoy people. Avengers: Infinity War. I didn't think the movie was that good. There wasn't a lot of character development, like, we knew it was gonna be like that. The main character of the film is Thanos, and I can't get behind that. And it might just be a personal thing. I don't like having some galactic despot as the main character of the film. Seeing all your favourite characters interact was fun. I really liked the Thor plotline. Again, I'm not saying it's bad because it's near the bottom of the list. I'm just saying I didn't like it as much as some of the other films. Number 15, Iron Man 2. So Robert Downey Jr. is charismatic as hell, and he's playing kind of an asshole character, but he makes him interesting. Iron Man 2 suffers from some sequel problems in that they don't really know where to take the character, so they just do the first movie again. The first movie is like, Tony is a jerk, and he, over the course of the movie, learns to be a better person. And then at the start of the next film, because they didn't know what to do in the sequel, they just put him back to being a jerk again, and he has to learn to be better again. Introduces Don Cheadle as Rhodey. Rhodey was in the first one, but it was a different dude. The villains are kind of hamming it up a bit. They're ultimately forgettable, but for forgettable Marvel villains, they're not bad. Like, it's fun seeing Mickey Rourke and stuff, even if he is doing a weird Russian accent. Number 13, Captain America: Civil War. Yeah, it's another team-up one. I don't like Civil War that much because the argument seems kind of forced. You kind of think, if these people sat down and like thought and talked it out for 5 minutes, they could come to a more reasonable solution than immediately going to punching each other. But again, with the other team stuff, it's fun seeing your favourite characters interact. The Bucky, Sam, Steve dynamic is quite fun. Spider-Man turns up for the first time, and I really like Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think Tom Holland does a great job. Black Panther turns up as well. He doesn't do a whole lot in this one. Yeah, I feel like my main problem with Civil War is the plot's kind of forced, and you don't get that much character stuff unless you're Captain America or you're Iron Man. Number 12, Avengers Assemble, known in the US as Avengers. They had to call it Avengers Assemble in the UK because we already have a movie called The Avengers. It's the last team-up movie. After this was sorted. When the movie first came out, it was groundbreaking and the first movie we've had like this ever. And it was amazing the first time I saw it. But as it goes on, like seeing 6 superheroes on the same time isn't impressive anymore. And once you take away that, you're kind of left with not a whole lot of exciting stuff. I put it above the other ones because it's still an enjoyable watch and it's got a lot more fun stuff than some of these ones that have ended up below it. I used to like Joss Whedon a lot, and as we go on, time is becoming more and more unkind to him. Number 11, Ant-Man. So Ant-Man's like, it's pretty fun. Paul Rudd's good to see. I like Michael Pena. Evangeline Lilly, she doesn't get a whole lot to do in this one, but I quite like her. The main thing that bothers me about Ant-Man is the thought of what it could have been instead of what it actually is. Because they had Edgar Wright in to write the screenplay, and the things that seem to be left over from his writing are what stands out most about the film. When Michael Pena's character is describing like the plans and it's doing this flashy cut in between and like it's his voice coming out of all the people's mouths, it's like, this is great, and then you go back, as soon as that finishes, you're back to kind of like, there's no interesting technical bits going on in the movie. Another forgettable villain. The Ant-Man character's fun. Seeing the shrinking stuff is a good time. I do like Ant-Man. It was a fun film. Number 10, Captain America, the First Avenger. It's another one of the early ones, so they were still working out where they were, so it's not perfect, but I think it's a decent period piece, like World War II era. Peggy's a lot of fun. I think Chris Evans does just a great job as Steve in all of these movies, and it was great, like first time seeing him, that was really good. Red Skull, again, is a boring villain, but Hugo Weaving's quite fun in the movie. I kind of like it because it feels very separate from everything else because of the time period. It's just something a bit different. Number 9, and higher up than I thought it would be, Doctor Strange. While I was watching the movie, I wasn't like, oh, this is really a standout Marvel movie. But like thinking about it, it does quite a lot of good stuff. Benedict Cumberbatch, I got a bit sick of him a few years ago because he was in everything, but he does a good job here. Kind of playing a very similar character to Tony in Iron Man, but he does a decent job of it. All the magic stuff is cool. There's some really interesting visuals with like the turning buildings. That's cool. I like how he saves the day, not by having like a punch out with the villain, but by doing something actually smart and that was set up before. It's more interesting than I gave it credit for, and I'm realizing that now. Number 8, Iron Man, the first one. It's the one that started it all off. It did a very good job. It's a good self-contained story. Robert Downey Jr.'s performance, of course, is amazing. That's the reason the whole MCU works so well, is because of this. Jeff Bridges is an okay villain, ultimately like pretty boring, being a horrible businessman, and then at the end of the movie he's just like big Iron Man. Number 7, Iron Man 3. If you want to complain about the fact that the Mandarin was a fake out and all that jazz, like, you need to chill out, because the movie's so good. It's just a lot of fun. It's dealing with Tony's PTSD from the first Avengers movie, which is something a lot more interesting than most of these other movies deal with. A lot of people say that Tony's superpower is that he has a lot of money, and this movie goes a long way to like countering that argument. He's left like alone with just his wits to work with. There's a really good action movie scene where he sneaks into the Mandarin's house with like just stuff he bought from B&Q or whatever. I don't know, it's just really, it's a good time, and it's a lot more interesting than some of the other movies. Again, forgettable villain. Number 6, Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This is another one, like Iron Man 3, that takes the character to a more interesting place than the original movie did. I liked the first Captain America movie, but he was never really challenged for like the whole movie, and this one really goes into like what he would do when the system that he's supporting fails, and it's just a really good spy movie. A lot of good action scenes, a lot of good intrigue and double crossing stuff. You don't know whose side everyone's on. It's good. It's a very good film. Number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy. So I really love this film, but it's got a forgettable villain, Lee Pace. I like him. He didn't have a lot to work with here. This movie gets tangled up with just too many villains. There's Yondu, there's Nebula, there's Ronan the Accuser, and Thanos is there as well. And they're just kind of like delegating stuff to each other. It's kind of weak because of that, but the Guardians are like the most interesting characters, and the fact that they all come together as like outsiders to save the universe that hates them. It's really good, but it's lacking a few things which they address in the sequel, which is it's all you can ask for, really. Number 4, Black Panther. I'm gonna say that Black Panther is the best execution of the standard Marvel formula that we've seen so far. So it follows like all the same beats, but it does them a lot better than all the other movies have. So instead of a boring villain, you have an interesting villain who is making good points, but his methods are flawed, and he forces our hero to reflect upon his own beliefs, and that works really well. All the side characters are a lot of fun. I'm gonna chuck it out there, the worst part of the film is Andy Serkis, and I usually really like him. I like him in all the movies where you can't see him, so like he's pretty fun as Snoke in the Star Wars ones, he's amazing as Gollum. The Planet of the Apes movies, I think he's really good in. He just doesn't work for me in Black Panther. Everyone else does a fantastic job though. Number 3, Spider-Man Homecoming. The decision to make this movie like a high school comedy is genius. It's the best execution we've seen of Spider-Man out of the million other Spider-Man movies we've seen. Actually having someone around the right age play him works surprisingly well. Zendaya is great, she's a lot of fun. Having Peter have a best friend is a good idea. Like, he's never really had that in any of the other movies, and that works really well. It captures the Spider-Man thing of he has to juggle his schoolwork and being a superhero. And got one of the best villains in the MCU, Vulture, is actually interesting. You understand what he's doing. He's not just a bad guy who wants to destroy the world for no reason. Michael Keaton does a great job there. I really love Spider-Man Homecoming. Number 2, Thor Ragnarok. I've probably not talked about it on here before, but I think Taika Waititi's films are amazing. What We Do in the Shadows and Hunt for the Wilder People are probably like 2 of my favourite comedies. So when I heard he was doing the third Thor movie, I was very excited, and it was very good. The things holding it back were it being forced into that Marvel 3-act structure that a lot of these movies seem to be forced into. While Cate Blanchett's doing a decent job as Hela, and she's like really hamming it up, it's kind of the least interesting part of the film. Whenever we're with Thor and Hulk and Loki on Trash Planet, we're having a great time, and then we go back to Asgard and it's just like, I want to be back where the action's happening. And it really feels like the bits on the other planet are the exciting new bits that Taika's been able to put in, and the other bits are like the Marvel mandated You have to have so much Asgard stuff. You gotta put the Warriors 3 in and he just like kills them immediately. It's a really fun movie and it's got so much charm compared to the other Thor movies. Like really takes it to that logical next level of what to do with the Thor character. It does a really good job. Number 1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So when I first saw this one, I was like, yeah, I enjoyed that, but I didn't like it as much as the first. And then I watched it again very recently, and it just really landed. All the jokes were great. The music, on my first watch, I was like, they're really pushing the music stuff this time. Second watch, it like really fits in and like goes with the theme. And all the emotional moments in the film, like they're devastating. It's so good. I like how the surviving villains from the first film get redeemed. It just makes sense, as the Guardians are like a mishmash of people who don't fit in. So you get the villains from the first movie, it makes sense for them to join the team and help out. And it really explores the idea of Peter being immature, and instead of treating that as just like that's part of his character, it's exploring like, no, you need to grow up a bit. It really landed with me on the second viewing. I would recommend a rewatch. If you saw it the first time and didn't think it was that good, I highly recommend it. So that's my ranking of all the Marvel movies. If you disagree and you want to put Infinity War as the first one because it's got so many superheroes in it, wow, fill the comments with telling me I'm an idiot. I'd love that. But seriously, I'd love to hear your opinions. If you've got anything drastically different from me, let me know. I'm quite interested. I realise most people probably won't value the same things in movies that I do, especially in these Marvel movies that are meant to be big fun action movies, and I've picked kind of like the smaller, goofier ones. But yeah, I love these films, and let me know which ones you love. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.